Rhythm games. Arguably one of the most satisfying game genres that exist, because it just feels so good to press the buttons in time with the music. But some rhythm games take that a step further, such as Hi-Fi Rush, a game where every attack you perform is on beat to the music, and it's definitely one of the most unique and enjoyable games I've played in the rhythm genre. But I recently had an idea for a game that also combines combat with rhythm. An FPS rhythm game where you can only shoot on beat to the music. And I'll also make it a roguelike to make it more interesting. So these are the ideas I had for the game so far. It's just a roguelike where you fight enemies on beat with guns. So there'll be different rooms. So once you complete a room, you just go on to the next room. And they'll have a weapon or an upgrade at the end of the room. Maybe with like different rarities and everything. Enemies move towards the player every beat. Fast ones every beat and off beat. And then projectile ones will take 3 beats to charge up and shoot on the 4th. And if they can't see the player, obviously they will use that to move towards them instead of shooting. I thought about having the player move speed relative to the BPM of the current song. And you can only jump on beat. There's a dash upgrade I want to have as well, and you can only dash on beat. Pistol can shoot every beat. Dual pistols can shoot every beat and off beat. Shotgun every 2 beats. Assault rifle every beat and off beat. So you press it on beat, then you hold it, and it just keeps shooting repeatedly until it's out of ammo. And then sniper, aim in 1 beat, shoot on 2nd, and then reload on next 2. I also thought about increasing the BPM after beating a boss, but I don't think that'll work. But maybe depending on the difficulty, because I do want to have a difficulty system as well that you choose before you enter the game. And upgrade that as a small arrow rhythm game in the corner that appears every so often. Maybe it could like freeze the game for a sec while it occurs. Or it could have like 2 buttons, like maybe Q and E. Gives you bonus effects, such as bonus damage. A skill tree for every weapon and a major upgrade in the game. If you unlock the dash, you'll have a small skill tree for it. But like a health increase upgrade wouldn't, because that isn't really a major upgrade. This could be accessed after every 3 to 5 waves after a boss enemy encounter at an upgrade bench of sorts. These can be bought with coins collected from killing enemies, so every time you kill an enemy, you get coins or currency. And then a permanent skill tree for getting currency every few rounds, so like you get a small amount every time you beat a round or something. Now this can be found in the main menu and would increase stats slightly every upgrade, or have game-changing events, or adding different items entirely, so maybe you start off with only being able to get a pistol, but you can later unlock the sniper or something like that. Also, this was one of the biggest things I wanted, was a custom music implementer. So you put a song in a folder, and then it actually works in the game, and you can set its custom BPM for whatever it is. And then unlockable skins for weapons by getting kills or completing challenges. So something actually to work towards. It's like a pod camo grind of sorts, maybe. Alright, so this game is going to be 3D. First-person shooter game. And I don't know how to make 3D games. This is going to be fun to figure out. Character body 3D. It needs a collision shape 3D. Okay, yeah, that's the character right there. That's the guy. I need a camera. Then I want to create a new scene, game, and I want to put the player in the scene. I honestly need to look this up because I have no idea. Setting up the game area. Static body 3D. Collision shape. Box. Player, I want to move this up. Alright, there you go. That's a good playable area. Box mesh. Okay, character body 3D. Pivot. Character. What is pivot? I don't understand. Alright, well I'll just set the controls then, I guess. Alright, forward, back, left, right. Also jump as well, yeah. Alright, so then I need to make a player script. Is this like a top-down game? Because, like, can you not do first person in this? Would this work now? I don't think this would. Honestly, I don't think this is going to work. Okay, well, I'm just going to run this and see what it does. I can't tell if this is working or not. I'm going to make a mesh instance for this guy, so I can just see what's happening. And I guess instead of putting the camera there, I just put it in game instead. Does this work? It doesn't work. It actually just doesn't work. Well, what I'm going to do is just copy the entire code from here. It does. How? How though? What? What was different from mine and the other code? Well, the player's moving, but the only issue is I want it to be first person. Okay, this is the whole code for that. This is so much nicer than the other code. Okay, I think this works now. Never mind. I'm going to change some settings then. I think it's the window settings. No, it doesn't work. And the jump doesn't even work either. You know, I'm just going to delete this. Template. Oh, shit! Wait, that's so much easier. What the hell? Yeah, there you go. Oh, and it works now. I can just move in all directions. Sick. Okay, but now I want to set up the actual, like, rhythm aspect, kind of. And with this, what I want to quickly do is set up the clicking on the beat. I need to create a variable called beat time. I need to make beat time equals seconds per beat on ready. And then in the process, if beat time is more than 0, beat time minus equals delta. Else if beat time is less than or equal to 0. So it refreshes every time it reaches 0. So to player, if I add canvas layer and then add a label equals string game dot beat time. Okay, apparently that works. It does. I want it to be like between a second after and a second before it can happen. And then this is basically the perfect of like, if you hit it perfectly, yeah, it works. I'm spamming right now. And it only works within this set thing. Maybe I can set it even like tighter. I'm hitting it on beat right now. I'm trying my best. It's kind of really hard with no music or anything. Okay, that does work. Hit score is equal to 0. So this is basically a combo system now. And if I miss it, it doesn't work. And I could have this be like perfect, and then I could increase this a little bit, have that be good, and then bad, and then miss. And I could also implement a combo system. But as of now, the rhythm works because the main things you need to do is improving the BPM system with perfect, good, bad, miss values. I wanted to add a head bobbing effect that matches the BPM, just so it's more apparent what the BPM is and like has more of a visual look to how fast the song would be. I want to create a simple menu screen where you can select difficulty in a song, create different components for the player, so movement, stats, abilities. The main other thing I would need to add currently is just a health system with enemies that can damage you. Alright, that's day 1. Decent amount of progress, got the basics done that I really need currently, so yeah. Alright, day 2. And I'm on the initial ideas thing because I had another idea earlier. I had the idea for playlists. So you can create playlists containing uploaded or default songs that play for certain events. So if you go into the next room, it goes through songs you've added to the playlist and just randomly plays them if you choose to do so. And you can set specific songs for specific events. So maybe a boss fight song. But yeah, all I really want to do today is improve the actual rhythm system of the game as well as make different components for the player. I think this is how I did it with the survival game I'm making. So I want to have every component extend from this, and then anything I add within this would work in any of the player components that I make. So movement component. This needs to extend player component, class name, player movement. If I create a node, rename it to movement. I think this works. So if I take the player script here, just a movement for now, I delete that, and then movement. Then if I do export variable player, if I go here, I can assign the player to the player. And then I can do player dot velocity. All of these velocities would need to have player behind them. Player component resource actually needs to extend node instead. Alright, there you go, and it works now. It's all separate from the player script. And then this is just nice to have because I can add anything to any component by just writing in here. So even if I don't use this, just as setting it up, it's just a good thing, really. So this is player movement, and this is player stats component. So I can set all of the variables here to this. So if I'm going to keep sensitivity there. I'm going to also put gravity in there as well. Stats.jump speed, stats.speed. Okay, this should all work. Yep. Alright, cool. Then I can call this from anything. So even in the player, I'll have a category. Player movement, player stats. Okay, I don't want to move all of this though into an auto load. Okay, well this can be game. I do want another auto load. I'll add a combat component as well as a rhythm component if it would let me type. Okay, well I think this works. Yeah, that's really good actually. Okay, cool. Also do want to improve this so you can only click once per thingy, because if you just spam it, it sort of just doesn't really matter. Or if you miss, it adds a cooldown. Alright, cool. Well, this works very well. Alright, so today I created components for the player, movement, stats, combat, rhythm. I've also improved the rhythm system with a perfect, good, bad, and miss score, which is okay for now, but what I would need to do is change it into a system that uses signals to make the combat implementation easier. I also want to create a menu screen with the difficulty song choices and also actually test a song and do that along with the BPM and maybe add a metronome or some sort of visual cue that show the beats. Alright, cool. Day 2 done. Okay, day 3. I've just figured out how to do these signals and then I emit them within each of the rhythm score parts of the shoot button being pressed. If this works, then the whole combat system will work, which is great. Okay, yeah, it works. Cool, sick. So this is all the rhythm needs to be then. What I'd also want to do is have a cooldown as well. Cooldown time is equal to seconds per beat divided by 2. And then miss cooldown time. It's a whole beat. And then here, cooldown will equal miss cooldown time. And then everywhere else it would just be cooldown time. And at the bottom here, F cooldown is more than or equal to 0. Cooldown minus equal delta. And just for testing right now, instead of a score, I'm going to have cooldown. I'm going to shoot if it's less than or equal to 0. Okay, yeah, so this all makes sense. This all works perfectly. This is it working simply, though. So this is just clicking on the beats now, which does technically work. There is a cooldown. Probably even make the cooldown a bit longer. You can technically spam it, yeah, but it just doesn't work. And if there's going to be combos as well, it will end the combo instantly. So either way, it's a good precaution. I want an auto load called game, an actual scene instead of just a script. And this is not going to actually have nodes within it that constantly play. So say if I wanted to have a song that would follow the player around, I could just have that play in the auto load instead of the game itself, which would be a lot easier to manage. And I can also connect signals to it as well. Alright, so I've created 4 menus real quick. A main menu with the play settings and exit button. When you press the settings button, it takes you to the settings menu, which doesn't have anything currently, but a back button so you can go back to the main menu. And if you press play, it takes you to the difficulty menu where you choose your difficulty. And if you click any of these buttons, it takes you to the song menu where you choose your song. And then it takes you to the actual level. So settings doesn't do anything. Play, easy, song 1. Also, depending on what song you choose, I changed the BPM just to test if that would work. Alright, so today I improved the rhythm system by adding signals. I created 4 menu screens, so main menu, settings, difficulty select, and song select. But I do actually want to implement songs into the song select menu, as well as being able to change the BPM of it within the menu itself. And then also create a simple combat system allowing you to hit enemies as well as being able to get hit. The only issue I might have is implementing different rhythm systems based on different weapons. But other than that, all of this is relatively simple stuff. It won't take me more than a week, I'd assume. And then I can get into like the real implementation of stuff like the many different weapons and their skill trees and stuff like that. Day 3 done. So on day 4, I implemented Hurtbox and Hitbox components for entities, created a simple enemy object, and set up a simple attack system so the enemy can deal damage and knockback to the player. On day 5, I started working on the combat system by creating a weapon resource and weapon instance script, as well as a combat component script that manages the use of weapons. I also improved the rhythm system by simplifying the code. On day 6, I created a projectile object that spawns whenever you fire a weapon. I also created an enemy script that uses the Hurtbox component to detect whether it is hit, applying damage and knockback. On day 7 to 8, I started implementing automatic firing for certain weapons, and spent the majority of the time cleaning up code, reworking the rhythm system so it's more consistent, as well as improving the overall movement. On day 9, I finished implementing all weapon firing types, including automatic for the assault rifle, multiple bullet firing for the shotgun, as well as a rechambering system for the shotgun and sniper weapons that activates a cooldown relative to the beat when fired. From day 10 to 17, I worked on the weapon models and animations. This took so long because I basically had to relearn Blender entirely, since I hadn't used it in a while. But I got the hang of it eventually and was able to make a pistol model, which I managed to implement into the game relatively well. I then made the shotgun model, the assault rifle model, and lastly, the sniper model. Alright, day 18. And I have all of the weapon models finished. There's still a few things I need to do for the combat. Specifically, shotguns reloading 1 bullet at a time. Because currently, if I shoot 2 bullets and then reload, it just reloads all of the bullets at once. So I need to make sure putting 1 bullet in the gun is 1 bullet added to the current bullet count. Alright, so I made a single bullet reload function. So basically, if your current ammo is less than the max capacity, on beat it plays the reload animation, adds the ammo to the current mag, and takes one from the reserve. And it does this until the current mag ammo is equal to the mag capacity, and then it stops. And I also added this to the reload function, so if the single bullet reload is true, then it does that, else it just reloads normally, which I added to the weapon resource here. So this should technically work. Okay, it's stuck in a loop. Alright, I changed it up a bit so that needed is now just the amount of bullets that need to be reloaded. So if it's more than 0, it does this and it takes away 1 every time it reloads a bullet. So this should work. Shoot once. It worked. Okay, yeah, that works perfectly. And just to keep this here for now, I'm gonna do rechamber as well, just to see if this works. Yeah, okay, that works. Alright, so the combat is pretty much done. I also want to start work on the NPC combat, so the basic idea I have is that the enemies will move towards the player every few beats. And it also scales with BPM as well, so there's kind of two elements of skill with the actual difficulties I will implement. The idea was that these two would have 3 beats to charge up, and then on the 4th they attack you. In this one, it's 1 charge, 1 attack, so charge, attack over and over again. So it would actually be a lot harder to manage. Alright, so I made this combat component that basically holds different actions, and I can change them willingly here to whatever action I would want them to do on that beat. So initially I had idle, charge, dash. So on beat 1 and 2, they're idle. Beat 3, they charge. And beat 4, they dash towards the player, which is what I explained earlier. And I can change this however I want. So beat 1 be shoot, and then they're idle, charge, and then dash. I can even add more to this. So if I wanted it on a 5th beat, so I could cycle between different actions if I wanted to. And each action has its own function. The only one I've really done anything with is the dash, because idle doesn't really do anything anyway. Charge would just be an animation, and shoot I just haven't made yet, so. I also made a separation function here, which whenever they dash towards each other, they are sort of pushed away from each other, so they're not constantly inside of each other. And overall, it looks pretty good. If I turn the beats per second up a bit, it goes a bit quicker. It does some weird movements sometimes, but I honestly feel like that could work because they're more clumped up this way. I'll definitely make them more dangerous because at the moment they're kind of just not really. Like I can increase their max speed every few rounds or so and increase the damage they do. Alright, so pretty much added per bullet reload to shotgun, implemented enemy combat to an extent, and improved the rhythm system. But I still need to clean up the code a bit, improve the enemy movement, finish settings, add UI, and then implement songs into the menu. On day 19, I created 2 beat indicator UIs, including a circle indicator that shrinks into the middle of the screen on beat, as well as a line indicator at the bottom of the screen, with lines that move to the center showing when beats and off beats happen. On day 20, I improved the line beat indicator, optimized the combat component code, and improved the song menu, allowing me to actually add music to the game. Which actually works pretty well. On day 21, I implemented weapon objects, allowing you to pick up and drop the different weapons. I also added a rarity multiplier, increasing the stats depending on the rarity of the weapon. On day 22, I made some improvements to the rarity multiplier system, as well as implementing weapon and player upgrades, allowing you to increase stats by a percentage or base number. I also partially improved hit registration to make hitting enemies more consistent, as well as planned out the overall progression I want for the game. Alright, so these are the ideas I had for the run progression. So when the player dies, it obviously resets the game since it's a roguelike. I want a permanent currency that can be used to unlock permanent upgrades in the main menu. And the currency is earned by just playing, given to the player every round. The upgrades would consist of like small stat increases, drop chances, and every few waves a shop opens, allowing you to buy upgrades for your weapons as well as stat increases. So I moved away from the skill tree idea because I felt like that'd be way too much. Also, it wouldn't really scale as well as this, because if the enemies infinitely scale, then there'd be a hard cap on the upgrades you can get. So with this, you could just infinitely add it to a weapon and the player. Yeah, the currency system, you hit enemies and you get points, and depending on the score you get, like perfect, good, bad, you get more points, and it builds up a combo allowing you to get more currency. Special weapon crates spawn when you beat a boss, which spawns every few rounds. That drops a random weapon with a random rarity. And I thought this was pretty cool. To open it, you have to beat a small rhythm game, instead of just opening it by pressing E or something. And then hitting a certain amount of arrows opens it. And if you get a perfect score, it gives you a higher chance of getting a better rarity. Abilities can be unlocked by completing optional trials that spawn on the map every few rounds. It can be ignored if the player doesn't want to get the upgrade, but it will consist of special enemies that are harder than normal enemies. And if you beat it, you get a random skill. If you already have the skill unlocked, picking up the same skill will upgrade the current skill stats. So if you have a dash skill and you get another dash skill from the trial, it would upgrade its like dash distance, speed, decrease its cooldown. Weapon rarities will have different effects, with uncommon doing basic stat increases, rare to epic having major stat increases, legendary having major stat increases, as well as a random unique bullet type, and that's random. So there'll be more incentive to actually actually open the crates instead of just leaving them there. If you already have a legendary weapon, like if you want a different bullet type or something. Yeah, I feel like that would be cool. From day 23 to 25, I added a currency system that gives you points when shooting enemies that depends on the accuracy you get when shooting. I then used the upgrades I created to make a shop object, where you can spend this currency to get stat increases for you or your weapon. I also created a spawning system for the enemies, where they spawn at certain spawn points I can set, with easy spawning an enemy every 4 beats, medium every 2 beats, and hard spawns an enemy every beat. On day 26, I completely changed the way shooting works, by removing the bullet collisions and instead creating a ray cast from the player, detecting if you are aiming at the enemy and if the enemy is within range, which made it way more consistent. On day 27, I improved the NPC Combat system by having actions become a resource, so I can assign them easier depending on the difficulty. I then created the weapon crate object that has a rhythm minigame you have to beat in order to open it. On day 28, I implemented the skill system. The dash skill has 5 levels, with level 1 unlocking the dash, 2 increasing its speed, 3 increasing the length of the dash, 4 increasing the cooldown, and 5 allowing you to ram into enemies, dealing damage and knockback. The double jumps level 1 unlocks double jump, 2 increases jump height of double jumps, 3 increases speed while midair, 4 resets jumps when killing an enemy, and 5 increases your extra jumps to 2. The melee skill level 1 unlocks melee, 2 increases the range, 3 increases the damage, 4 increases the knockback, and 5 makes the melee stats the same as your current held weapon. On day 29, I reworked the interaction system by making it a separate component, implemented a regeneration system, healing the player every 4 beats dependent on the regeneration stat, and created a skill totem object that spawns stronger enemies that when killed destroys the totem, awarding you with a random skill. I then created different collectible items, including an ammo item, a healing item, and a currency item, that will have a small chance of dropping from enemies. I also started to work on adding a ranged enemy type, which I had some small issues with. On day 30, I was able to get the ranged enemy type working, with different attacks and behavior from the normal enemies. I also implemented a trial enemy type that spawns from the trial totems, as well as a boss enemy that spawns every 5 rounds, dropping a weapon crate when killed. I then started to work on the visuals of the enemies, creating a model for the basic enemy type with animations and textures, as well as doing some small updates to the pistol model to match the style of the enemy. And I think it actually looked pretty good in game. On day 31, I created a model for the ranged enemy type, a model for the trial enemy type, and a model for the boss enemy type, and implemented them all into the game. On day 32, I created textures for the pistol, the assault rifle, the shotgun, and the sniper, as well as creating models for the weapon crate, the dash skill, the double jump skill, the melee skill, all collectibles, and the upgrade shop. On day 33, I created a model for the trial totem, as well as making particle effects for the melee skill, particles for the weapons depending on their rarity, and laser particles for the ranged enemy and boss enemy attacks. I then started working on the custom music menu. On day 34, I fully implemented the custom music menu, allowing you to implement custom music with a name and BPM, by adding an MP3 file into the custom song folder. I then started to work on the UI, by making a custom health bar with effects when you get hit, a small screen bounce effect for whenever a beat happens, changing the font of other UI elements, adding a round transition UI, showing any events that have occurred, as well as the round count in the top left, the currency above the health bar, an enemy's left count, and UI showing the rarity of your current held weapon. I then thought it'd be funny to add an impossible mode when you reach round 30 in hard mode, which makes the enemy's attack insanely fast. Alright, so this is possibly the final day. It's currently March 22nd, and I have been doing this project every day since February 16th. And although it is the last day, I still have a lot that I actually need to do. I still need to actually do the menu UI. I only have it all set up like this, with just basic visuals. I haven't even got the settings page set up. I also need to do balancing for basically everything. And I also need to add a death state to the player because I haven't got around to that. Because currently whenever the player dies, it just crashes the game. So yeah, a lot of work to do on the final day. So for day 35, I started off by making a screen effect for whenever you are damaged and a screen effect for whenever you are healed. I then made a weapon movement effect that moves relative to the BPM, so the faster the BPM, the faster the weapon moves. I also improved the UI font by adding a stroke around it, as well as changing the color of the currency font and adding a simple crosshair. I then created a settings menu, including visual settings, audio settings, and keybind settings, of which I then added to an in-game menu that also pauses the game when opened. I added particle effects to enemies so whenever they are damaged or killed, as well as a death screen displaying the kills, currency, and a round you achieved. But I then ran into a game-breaking issue. Whenever the player was hit, they began floating. I tried for hours to fix this bug in many different ways. Rewriting code, resetting collisions, reworking how hitboxes work, how enemies move, but none of it was working. But then I finally found out what the issue was. So while making UI effects, I made a screen shake effect that moves the camera slightly whenever you are hit. It turns out that the camera moved a bit too much, meaning the player wasn't floating, but the camera was. So I changed the camera shake code so it doesn't do that. But that was the end of the day. And even after 9 hours straight of work that day, it still wasn't finished. So I then decided that I'll keep working on it until it's in at least a playable state. So for day 36, I added a spawn particle effect to enemies, created a completely new menu screen, and decided to call the game Rogue Rhythm, which I think fits well. I mean, it's a roguelike rhythm game. I updated the rest of the menu UI, including the difficulty select menu, the settings menu, the song menu, as well as added a sensitivity slider to the settings menu. I then added a fade in effect for whenever the game starts, as well as completely remaking the upgrade shop menu by adding different visuals to the upgrades and menu itself, as well as adding a restock and buy ammo button. I also improved the crate UI slightly and started working on the map. On day 37, I completely finished the map. I also added UI for weapon objects showing their stats, as well as their applied upgrades, of which I also added to the game menu, showing your current held weapon stats, as well as a player stats UI. I then added a base point gain upgrade to the shop that increases the amount of points you get per enemy hit. And on day 38, I changed the point gain upgrade from an upgrade to a button in the menu, as well as created skill UI, showing what picking up each skill does, depending on the level of that skill. I then completely reworked how enemy scaling works, but making it a bit more fair since it was very unbalanced previously. I then tried for a while to make music for the game, and having little experience with making music at all, so I eventually decided to settle on having Sneaky Snitch be the default song. And it doesn't really matter that much since you can import custom music. And I just spent around 140 hours in the past 2 weeks trying to finish this game, and had other things I wanted to work on. So I left the music and decided to end development here. Right, the game is finally done. It's actually in a playable state now. There's still a load of things I would like to add to it though, but I need to move on to the Hightail project. This is definitely nowhere near the full game. I will come back to this. It's more so just a demo. Like, everything works, all of the settings work and everything. The only thing that doesn't work is the sound effects and UI, because there are no sound effects in UI. But yeah, all of these work and everything. You know, this fully works. If I open the folder, I can actually put a song in here. And if I close that, refresh, and then it's there. You click the song and then add song and it works. And I think it goes without saying that the higher the BPM you choose, the harder the game is. So there's like 2 layers of difficulty to it. I did properly play a game just after I finished it yesterday. I got a legendary assault rifle on the first boss kill, so it's so easy. Because if you get lucky and you get a legendary weapon really early, it actually just makes it so much easier. I got to around 30 and I was still one-tapping guys. I also got really lucky with the upgrades as well, but I did primarily stick to the currency gain at the beginning, which is definitely the strategy. But overall, this is actually a pretty good game, and I feel like I did a good job for like working on it for like 35 days. I think it was 35 days. There are still like bugs and stuff, but they're not game breaking, so like I'll come back to them at some point. I have some of them written down, and they're mostly already to write entire systems to do. One of them is if you reload a shotgun just after a beat, you have to wait until the next beat until it starts reloading. And that's just the way the rhythm system is done. And I think it's specifically with the single bullet reload weapons that does that. So I need to like find a way to change it so that it works. And also there, whenever the song restarts, it has a little bug. It's not game breaking, so I still need to add visuals for the skills, like cooldown meters or something. But it tells you in the description how long you have to wait, so... Oh my god. I'll use that on the weapon I get from this guy. If you find a good upgrade, you can like decide if you want to use it on the current weapon or wait for a better weapon. Oh yeah, I'm glad I waited. That's a purple pistol. Okay, that's just 10 base damage, and I know I one-tap these guys. See, you can get extremely lucky and it becomes so easy. But then again, these guys do scale quickly. You have to keep upgrading the weapon. And if you keep upgrading the weapon, you don't really upgrade the player as much, and you can just get one-tapped. So you do have to manage different things. Also, I probably won't get up to round 30, but round 30 on hard is fucking insane. Yeah, actually, you do have to increase your speed, otherwise you will die, which I should probably do. +1 bullet is crazy. Especially with the +10. Yeah, look, see, they're already taking 2 hits, even though I got a legendary upgrade and a purple pistol. And you do have to be careful when buying ammo because they do surround you pretty easily. You know, I take quite a bit of damage from them. Like, if I get shot by a load of guys at once, oh, that was lucky. I'm kind of fucked. +1 bullet. Oh my god. Yeah, now I do double damage because I shoot 2 bullets. I should probably increase the price of that, but for now it's fine. It's balanced enough in a way where it's not too difficult. 20% max speed, I'm going to go for that because that's going to help in the later rounds. Yeah, I 3-tapped the boss. Also, if you, like, upgrade your player movement stuff, you can climb up to these parts of the map. Because currently I can't make it at all. But a good strat would be, if you want, like, loads of weapons early, you just spam upgrade the player and currency amount. Okay, yeah, I think I will make it to around 30. Mag capacity is nice as well, because if you buy ammo, it's based on the mag capacity. The more you increase it, basically the more ammo you get. Keeping a bad weapon is still good. If you deal less damage with it, still get the same amount of points. Especially assault rifles, they're really good for point gain. Assault rifle's good for point gain. I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. Oh my god. Yeah, you have to be really careful if you didn't upgrade your health that much. Oh yeah, I have insane health regen. Yeah, I instantly regen, but that's because my health is so low. 25% health regen. And the acceleration. I get the acceleration, so it instantly... It's still not instantly, I'm still a bit slippery moving around. Why isn't it doing it? Oh, it's because... Oh, that's a bug. That's the only issue. If your jump speed's too high, you can't really get to this platform easily. Oh yeah, that's also a bug. I don't know why that happens. Because I have killed the only one before. They're getting really quick. Oh. Oh. No, that's also a bug. Sometimes it just auto-fires, but I mean, it's an auto-firing weapon anyway, it doesn't really matter. Oh my god. Pick it up! Wait, I would prefer this over the pistol, actually. Although it's a really good pistol, I can just farm points to make this better. I'll put range on this, and then mag capacity on the sniper. I just want to get to around 30 to show off how insane it gets. God, I really wish I had time to make sound effects with this, because it'd be so much more satisfying. I feel like I need to make this harder in some areas, but, like, balance the shop system more. It really is so satisfying, especially with meleeing them, because it gets all of them. I could add, like, a piercing upgrade as well. Increases the amount of enemies it can pierce through. It'd probably be a legendary upgrade, though, just straight off the bat, just one enemy pierce. And on a sniper, I'll just have it set so it can pierce one enemy. Also, the reason this map is so, like, open like this is because these guys don't have any pathfinding. I tried to do it, and I was just so confused. So I'd need to learn more about it before I actually fully commit to it, because I didn't want to change the code too much. But now the game's in a state where I can say it's in a good point. So when I do come back to this, I'm going to add pathfinding so enemies can walk around walls instead of walking into them. I can't do knockback. Oh my god, I almost died. Yeah, this one tapping guy is 98. So they have less than 100 health. I feel like I'm too quick now. I definitely jumped too high. When I have got like 60 upgrades applied to myself, 30 upgrades applied to this weapon. Okay, impossible mode. Holy fuck. Yeah, they're definitely a lot faster. Oh my god. Well, I definitely did need the speed that I have now. They kind of like protect each other as well, like the elite ones get pushed to the back. Which is kind of cool, actually. I could add like a really hard mode where they move every half beat. Like all the actions just changed from on beat to half beat. Actually, that would be so funny. I might do that in the next update. Because I'm kind of moving away from these guys, even though they're moving as fast as they possibly can. Yeah, I mean, this is basically the game. From here, they just get more health, more damage, and they don't increase in speed, I don't think. But at the same time, you would also increase in health and damage, because the more you shoot and get money, the more money you make. And they're not really doing much damage. Okay, I died anyway. Oh, I could have got 1,000 kills. Well, 30 rounds is basically the hardest it gets in terms of speed and attacks. Yeah, this is the game. I think it's cool. I did a good job with it. Obviously, all these settings are changeable. I'll show them real quick. Crosshair, circle indicator, line indicator, it disappears whenever you... So if you want to play hardcore mode. Weapon bottoming, screen shake, The weapon doesn't move whenever you move. I feel so slow now. FOV, volume, sensitivity. 0.1 is probably the best that I've found. Player stats shows your current player stats, current held weapon stats. Select menu. I mean, yeah, this is all there is. I mean, I have the playlist here that's coming soon. I mean, it is a simple game, but there's a lot to it. How I'm actually able to implement stuff, because I could like easily just add like a new set of upgrades for the shop, for example. I mean, there is a few bugs and stuff, but they're not game breaking, so I don't really need to worry about them. At this point, I would usually show off the code and everything, but there's so many of everything. Look at all these scripts. I don't want to have to go through all of these. I guess I'll like briefly explain how things work. Okay, so the way this game works is it's a component system. So the player is made up of a component, so movement, combat, interaction, stats, rhythm, skill. Alright, so the actual player script, it holds the components, the main UI, the camera movements. This is mainly just visual stuff. And this is the regen. This has a regen counter. Required beats of regen, it heals the player. It resets a regen when the player's hit. It's just the visual effect for the health bar. And the hurt is just another visual thing. It shakes the camera, shakes the health bar, and makes the screen flash red. And then the walk cycle is basically the thing that makes the weapon move on beat. So this starts when you actually start moving, and this manages when you actually walk on the beat. It like resets it and everything. It moves the position of the weapon, and this is when you let go. It just stops all of the movement and moves back to its original position. And this is when the player dies. It says is dead is true, which I think prevents the player from actually being able to get hit again or move. So it's a stationary death screen. Makes the settings false, closes the game menu if it's open, and opens the death screen. Movement is just the movement, camera movement, normal moving movement, knockback is here as well, because it just calls a function whenever it's hit that handles knockback, jumping, and also the double jump stuff. If there's an extra jump, then use the extra jump. Dash movement is a dash attack. When you get max dash upgrades, you can dash into enemies. Has a window for being invincible, basically. The combat in this game is kind of a lot in terms of the weapons, at least. How it basically works is there's weapon data and then weapon instances. The weapon instances hold the weapon data, and I have them both set here just to set them here. So if I wanted to like start with a different weapon just for testing purposes, I would just put it into the inspector here. These are just the weapon scenes. These initialize the slots stored in the weapon data slots. Cooldown thing. Handles weapon actions in process. If you press reload, it does it. If you press melee, it does it. If the melee level is more than 0. Handles weapon switching. Handles shooting. This is constantly running. If you're able to shoot and you're not reloading, and you press the button, it gets a result from the rhythm component, which I'll show in a sec. If it's not miss, then it fires. Single fire. And then if the weapon is automatic, it says automatic firing to true. And if automatic firing is true, it just calls the auto fire function. And then if it's released, it stops the auto fire. Melee, so if you can melee and the result is not equal to miss, and you have the melee skill, it creates a ray cast, so it gets an area in front of the player relative to the melee range of the skill. Gets the result. If there's enemies in the result, then the hurtbox of the enemy takes damage. Deals knockback, depending on the knockback of the skill. And then this is just like the particles. And then this handles the reload, so if you don't miss and the ammo is all good, so you actually need to reload. And if you have ammo to reload from, if it's a single bullet reload weapon like a shotgun, the single bullet reload function. If it's not, then it just reloads. And then if you miss, it just plays the miss animation. And then the shooting, single fire, that calls, and then at the end of those functions, spawn projectile happens, which is also just a ray cast. It's relative to the weapon's range, and it also has a spread as well, which is the accuracy. And if it detects an enemy, it just takes damage in the enemy's hurtbox, like the melee. The weapon damage and the knockback applies. And then the bullet visual is created to show where it lands. And then pick up weapon, so if you don't have a weapon in your second slot, but you have one in your first slot, then it just adds it to the second slot. And if the current weapon you're holding is in the first slot and not in the second slot. And if your current weapon's a weapon slot 2, it just replaces it with weapon slot 2. The same for if you're holding a weapon in weapon slot 1 and you have a weapon in weapon slot 2. Then it creates a new scene with the drop weapon. Depending on what your weapon type is, it creates a different drop scene. And it retains the data for the weapon. So when you upgrade a weapon and you drop it, it keeps the upgrades. And this just updates the weapon model whenever you swap. And this is just half of the combat. because this is just running everything. This is what controls things. It doesn't actually do anything apart from spawn a projectile. The real running of the weapon is the weapon instance script. This is the actual weapon itself, which holds the data and manages everything from that. So the data is basically just the stats, weapon resource. That's what this is. The weapon type, the rarity, damage, ammo type of it, rarity multipliers, rhythm stuff, and visual stuff. And that holds this data. From this, it has actual weapon stats that are calculated by applying the upgrades, the base stats for this. So for example, if there's a rarity multiplier and there are upgrades to it, the actual damage is equal to the base damage of the data plus the base damage increase, and then that is times by the rarity multiplier, which is times by the damage multiplier. And then these are the things that are called within the combat script. So in player combat, whenever you handle shooting, it does the single fire and auto fire things, which is handled here. So single fire, it fires weapon just once, auto fire while it's held and while it equals true, and if it's an automatic weapon, and while it's on the beat of the beat index. And the fire weapon, if it doesn't have any ammo, then it reloads. But if it does have ammo, it reduces it by 1, plays the animation, emits a particle. Then for the bullet count in the data, so a shotgun would have like 5, so it shoots 5 bullets. Plus the extra bullet count, which is the upgrade for bullet count in the shop, it spawns projectiles. And then if it has more than 0 beats per rechamber, so if it needs to rechamber after it creates a bullet. So the shotgun and the sniper, basically. And then reloading is done in stages, depending on the amount of beats per reload, because of the animations, basically. As soon as you press the reload button, it does the first stage. So reload, it plays the reload 1 animation. And then while stage is less than the amount of reload beats, and then it pluses 1 to the stage, plays the reload animation. And then if the stage to the reload beat, so when the animations are done, it applies the reload. And then it awaits half a beat before it makes reloading false, because if this isn't here, then as soon as you're done reloading, you can just instantly shoot again. Single bullet reload, basically the same thing, but it plays the same animation over and over again. So the shotgun, it applies 1 bullet per reload, and it's just while you need ammo in the gun, it does it. And then instead of applying the reload from a different function, it just adds 1 to the mag, removes 1 from the reserve, takes 1 off of needed, and then afterwards it rechambers. And then apply reload is just adding the ammo to the mag. And rechamber is basically the same thing, but it doesn't actually apply any ammo, it just does an animation and prevents you from being able to shoot. But yeah, that's basically how the combat works for the player. The NPC combat is way different, which I'll show in a bit, but I need to go to interaction. Basically how you interact with things. Again, it's a raycast. If you're looking at a thing and you can interact with the thing and you press a button to interact with the thing, then it interacts with it. It calls the interact function that's within it, which is different for everything. If that thing has the method interact, then it interacts. And then if it has the method pick up, then it picks it up. That's for things you pick up. And then this just updates the UI of looking at something. Alright, stats. This is the same across every entity. So they all have acceleration, max speed, jump speed, gravity, that's all movement stuff, vitals, max health, health regen, your actual health. The player doesn't use these two, the enemies do. And then the player uses these two. Apply upgrades for the player, the base currency gain. This is the player rhythm thing. This is how you get like the results from stuff. So whenever you shoot, it would call a result, and if it's not missed, then you're able to shoot. But if it's a miss, then it just misses. These are the windows you're allowed to get this within. This basically just tracks whenever it's clicked, and if it's within the distance of the windows, it returns the result. If the result was missed, then it misses. Else, it just gives you these results, which does matter. More so at the beginning of the game. You get more points based on your result. So bad is 1 point, good is 2 points, perfect is 3 points. And the cooldown is equal to a whole beat. So if you miss, you have to wait a whole beat. And then the skill list basically just manages the skills. Each skill has a level and its own variables. If the upgrade dash is called, it increases the upgrade by 1. If you get the first one, you enable the dashing and it just sets these variables. And then if it's 6, it prevents it from increasing a level and it just gives you money for it. Pretty much the same with these. This enables, it increases a stat, then money. Enables it, increases range, increases damage, increases knockback, and then this does something cool. And that's pretty much it for the player. I guess I could show you the UI as well. It's basically just all of the UIs overlaid. I won't go too in depth into it because there's just so much that goes into this, especially the settings as well. I guess I could look at the hurtboxes and hitboxes. Okay, hitbox. This is the thing that deals the damage with the hurtbox, and then when the area is entered, it appends that area to hurtboxes in range, and if it exits it, it erases it from the hurtboxes in range. And then the hurtbox is what actually takes damage. Take damage function, it needs a source, so the thing it came from, the origin, so the position it came from, the result, so perfect, good, miss, bad, the damage it dealt, the knockback it dealt. This is if the body is a player. If it's got the dash attack and it's dashing, and it returns, it sets the dash cooldown to true, and then it resets the regen, so if you get hit, it resets the regen time. The health of the stats of the hitbox take damage, and then it adds the score. If I don't put a score here, if I just leave it null, then this doesn't apply. So I only do this for something that's not a player. It applies the knockback, and it checks death. And then if the player gets hit, it emits the hurt thing, which I think is for just visual stuff. And then it just awaits the invulnerability stat, and then it sets damage cooldown to false. And if it's a hostile, it does visual stuff like particles and animation. Apply knockback just gets the direction and the knockback strength, and then it applies it to the movement script. And then check death, so if it has less than 0 health, and this is the player dash attack. If the player's dashing and it's dash attack and area, the enemy, it takes damage with these stats. I guess I'll go through the enemy stuff now. These are the models, and they're pretty cool, I think. Right, this is the enemy script that's used across all of the enemies. It manages the separation, so they can't really touch each other. They always, like, repel each other. This is if it dies, it just has a chance of dropping a item. If it's a boss, it drops a crate. Increases the total kills, particles, visual stuff. And this is the play animation function, so it just plays the animation of the animation that's called. Again, stats components, same as player one. Movement components a bit different. It doesn't actually control the movement. It controls the knockback and the velocity of it. And the separation. The combat is very different from the player. So the way it works is there's resources, combat actions for every single enemy, and they have all of the difficulties within them. So easy, basic. The actions it does is idle, idle, charge, dash, and that repeats every single bar, which is because I've set the thing here to 4. I've set these different for each difficulty, so medium is idle, idle, charge, dash, charge, dash, charge, dash. I can set this as high as I want, and it would just go through it every beat. Hard is just charge, dash, and then impossible is just dash. They dash over and over again. This basically just detects if the beat changes. This, the rotation of the enemy actually facing towards the player at all times whenever they need to. And then if it's on the beat, it runs the current action. But on the enemy being created, it sets the action depending on the difficulty, the current round, and it loads the resource. And then it runs the current action, so idle, charge, dash, shoot, depending on what stage it is within the resource. Idle does nothing except play an animation. Charge is just a state before it does an action, mainly just a visual thing, and it locks the direction of the player looking at them. And dash just sets the direction, moves towards that direction, depending on their max speed. And then if it's ranged, and it's within range, it shoots if it's impossible difficulty. So if it is close enough to the player, and it doesn't need to dash, then it just shoots them. Else, it just idles because it doesn't need to dash towards them. That's how I made it so that they don't actually constantly move towards the player, they just hover around them. And then this just sets the offset of the boss slightly up because it's quite big. It would like be halfway into the ground. This is shoot, creates a raycast, gets the locked direction, which is actually set within the charge. So the locked direction is the last seen position of the player. And when it's shooting, it doesn't actually constantly look at the player because then it would just have aimbot. So it locks onto position 1 beat, and then the next beat it shoots. Plays the shoot animation, and then it applies damage whenever the raycast hits the player. And then it emits the laser particle. So it's a pretty editable and expandable combat system for the enemies. I could do whatever I want with it. I could even just add a new action whenever I want, but then all I need to do is change it here, add a new element, just do whatever. It's pretty cool. Last thing I'm going to show off is the upgrade shop, which is pretty simple in how it works, but it's pretty cool. So it has arrays with all of the upgrades within it. I did initially have a way to load the upgrades within this, it did it itself, but whenever I exported the game, it just didn't load it in. Exported games have trouble loading resources from files, so I needed to add every single upgrade to arrays and then load it in that way. So on already it loads the upgrades, setting each of these into their correct rarity array, as well as setting the visual labels for everything, and then it restocks it. So load upgrades basically goes through every upgrade, gets the rarity, and then if the rarity name matches the array within the weapon upgrades or the player upgrades, then it adds the upgrade to that array. And then depending on the rarity, it has a different chance of actually appearing in the shop. So rarity increases over time. So legendary starts off really small and it keeps going up until round 50, up until it reaches a 10% chance. And then same with the rest. And then it gets a random number, and if it matches the chance of the rarity, then it returns the rarity. And this is called within the rarity chance. The rarity is gotten in the get upgrade function. And then whenever the shop restocks, it clears the current shop and then creates new buttons. Creating button gets an upgrade, which gets the rarity within the get upgrade thing. And this is called twice for both the weapon and player. Instantiates the shop button, which basically just holds the upgrade, and if you press it, then it applies the upgrade. Then clear container just removes the children of that node. When the restock button's pressed, if you have enough money, restock. On currency gain pressed, increases the currency gain stat of the player. And every time it's pressed, increases the cost of it by 50 and updates the label so it matches the cost. And then on the ammo button press, if you have enough money, it just increases the amount of ammo you have in your reserve ammo by the amount of ammo you can hold in a magazine. And this just manages opening and closing the menu, just making it visible and not visible. So that's how all the basic stuff of this game works, or the main stuff anyway. That's pretty much the game. I think I did a good job with it. I definitely will come back to this at some point if I have the time. But for now, I want to move on to the next project, which is the Hightail modding competition, because there's a new one now, and it's already a month into it, so I am late again. But yeah, this game is playable. You can play it now on itch.io. The link will be in the description. If you haven't already, then subscribe, because I'm close to 1,000 subscribers. And as soon as I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll start streaming on this channel every so often, working on projects live. So yeah, bye.